Well, in a minute, I'm going to be joined by Michael Hecht. He's the president and CEO of Greater New Orleans, Inc., the economic development body. And he has an amazing story about how this area not only came back from this tragedy, but came back better than before. And that story is so great that he actually was invited to talk about it at a TEDx conference. Now, you know, TED conferences or TED Talks are very short, 70 minutes. And then our editor-in-chief, Angela Kanan, managed to actually cut his talk back to 8 minutes, really the essence of this beautiful story about our host city, New Orleans. Have a look.
So this is kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about not just resilience, but radical resilience. The idea that you can actually come back better than before with cities. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So New Orleans, back in the 60s, it was the queen city of the South. It was the energy capital of America, right? It had a bigger population than Atlanta. It was the gateway to the Americas. This was the Pan American Festival, right? Everybody dressed much better back then. But then something happened. Through a combination, a toxic combination of benign neglect and active malfeasance, we began this inexorable decline. And that's what happened. And so then if you look at the numbers, you can see that we went through this decline where up until the oil spill, this is job growth for the 4 decades before Katrina. We were all kind of hanging pretty well. But then going forward from that point, places like Austin grew 350%. Places like Tampa and Raleigh, 250%. Our main competition, Atlanta, Houston, grew 200%. The nation grew 80% over that time. And what did we do as a region? That's not a city, it's a region. We underperformed the nation by half. But then this happened. And the general feeling about Hurricane Katrina was that this was the sad but inevitable end to a once great city. But then something remarkable happened on September 25th. We rebuilt the dome. Steve Gleason, who's a hero off the field, blocked the kick. And at that moment, when we went on to beat Atlanta, there were grown people crying in the stands, not just because we beat Atlanta, and not just because we knew at that point that the Saints were going to be back, but we knew at that point that New Orleans was going to be back, and then something even greater. New Orleans didn't just come back. Okay. We got crunk, and we came back better than ever. Better than ever. And the Saints won their first Super Bowl ever, and we came back better than ever. And that's what we're talking about with radical resilience. It's not just bottoming out, right? We all have our bottom outs and then coming back to where you were before. That's resilience, and that's very important. But can you use the moment of trial as an opportunity for transcendence? And that's what radical resilience is really about. We got a new brand. The Federal Reserve stopped calling us the Big Easy and called us the Big Busy. Their headline, by the way, a radical reset of the economy. So they're using the word radical. I want to go through a few reasons why this happened. Now, before I get into this, I think there's a few things that we have to recognize. The first thing is that, most importantly, it is our spirit. It is the Cajun heritage. We dance at funerals, all right? We are tough, tough people, okay? Most people don't do that. The second point to make is one that was referred to earlier, and that is that we will have ended up receiving about $140 billion as a result of the storm and all the public, private, philanthropic payments that come in afterwards. That's a lot of money. The second thing is that we embrace the new. New Orleans was never a place that embraced what was new and fresh. But if you think about, Katrina forced us into accepting things new. It broke up old paradigms, right? And necessity is the mother of invention. Then Katrina was the biggest and baddest mama of them all. Common theme, opportunity from adversity. The Macondo oil spill is going to give us the down payment on restoring our coast. We've started a whole new economic sector, emerging environmental, saying that we can be the Dutch of North America, that we can not only restore our coast and save ourselves, but we can create jobs. Hurricane Sandy up in New York, right now, companies from southern Louisiana have $400 million worth of contracts in New York and in New Jersey helping them rebuild. The power of coalitions. We used to be a very parochial place. I remember visiting my grandmother growing up here, and there was like a one zip code rule. That was all you were allowed to travel, right? If you had to go to get, if you had to go to make groceries, right? And, going across the lake, that was like going on, you had to leave a first of kin, get a But what we saw with Katrina is that water and people don't respect political boundaries, and so we have to work together. So first, the Southern Shore, New Orleans, Jefferson, St. Bernard started working together on flood protection. Finally, we changed our mindset. We went from thinking that we were competing against Mississippi, or that it was really good to be the Southern average, or that it was funny to be at the top of the bad lists. And once we started winning, and I would argue that it was really the rebuilding of the dome and the Saints that got that idea going that we could be winners and not ain'ts, we started getting accolades that would never have been thought possible on August 28, 2005, let alone in the destructive aftermath. #1 for wins, #1 for business conditions, #1 for tech growth in the country, #1 for economic potential. My father's mother, 15 years after this picture, when she was 90, had a stroke. And she was on her deathbed in the hospital, and it was pretty clear that we were going to lose her. When I got there, she could no longer speak. And she asked for a piece of paper. She gestured for a pen, and all I could find was a red pen from the nurse. And I gave it to her, and she wrote that first line. And I couldn't read it. And she looked at me with her eyes, and she was an impatient person all the time, and now she was extremely impatient, right? And she took the pen and she wrote it again. And I realized what she wrote. She summed up her entire life, 90 years, in 3 short words. A for effort. And I think that really is our call to action for all of us, is to continue to have a full effort, continue to stay engaged. Because if we do that, then the vision for the future of New Orleans is very, very exciting. It is a New Orleans with an economy that is diverse and that's supporting a middle class. It's an economy with an education system that's giving opportunity to everyone. It's a place that's reconnected to the world as once again a global destination. It's a place with world-class assets supporting commerce and community. It's a place with wetlands and coasts that are making the next 300 years sustainable. It is a place that has a quality of life that provides safety and opportunity for everyone. 10 years ago, in the aftermath of the greatest man-made disaster in American history, when people said that we should bulldoze our homes, who would have thought that New Orleans was going to be the greatest comeback of the 21st century? Who would have thought that the editor of Forbes would have called us the economic turnaround of our lifetimes? This is radical resilience. This is New Orleans.
This is New Orleans, and we're back live from New Orleans. And I'm currently joined by the man you just saw on that TED stage, Michael Hecht, president of Greater New Orleans, Inc. Welcome.
Gerrit, thank you. It's great to be here. Welcome to New Orleans.
And while I did a little bit of research on you, I found some more accolades we can tell, because you last year were awarded #2 Economic Development Board in the country, I believe.
Yeah, well, it's good to be in New Orleans doing economic development at this moment in time, that's for sure.
Exactly. And just a fun fact about the hotel where we are. We're currently at the Hyatt downtown New Orleans, which was actually voted best convention hotel of the nation in 2015. So a lot of awards being handed out.
Well, that's right. And actually, this hotel was really ground zero for Hurricane Katrina. This is where the mayor stayed. All the windows were blown out. This was really where it all started. So the comeback of this hotel is in many ways emblematic of the comeback of the entire city.
Wow. It just makes it even more special to be here. If we listen to your talk carefully, radical resilience. You can only be resilient when lightning strikes, right? So is the key message here that we all should have a disaster?
Well, you know, it's a question I get often asked, and the answer is, of course, no, because you would never wish the heartache and the loss and the suffering of Katrina on anybody, even your enemy. But what it does say is that when disaster strikes, then it's our responsibility, our moral and practical responsibility to honor those who have suffered by building back something even better. And so I think it's the memory of those who suffered and lost in Katrina that impels us today to build back a New Orleans that is not the New Orleans on the day before Katrina, but the New Orleans of the future. And that really is our motivating spirit.
Exactly. And would you say that we can then have some kind of radical resilience light? I mean, could we transfer some of these energies and this kindred spirit, could we transfer that to other applications? For example, this market research industry is under pressure, people say. That people should move, people should come to force, right? And come in action. What can we learn from this story there?
To me, it's almost like a Joseph Schumpeter's idea of creative destruction. And we have to look at destruction as an opportunity to create. We have to look at market volatility as an opportunity to create better companies, better products. And I think one of the things that we have naturally in here in Louisiana, in our Cajun spirit, is that we look at challenges and we find the opportunity. We look at not having any food or shelter and we build new homes and new cuisine. And so I think the question is, in all of us, can we learn to look at the inevitable challenges in an ever more volatile world as an opportunity for personal and for corporate progress? And that's really the framework we have to have.
And that then basically boils down to glass half full, glass half empty, right?
Well, it actually does. And so it's a question of, yeah, the glass is not only half full, but what's it full of? It's full of opportunity.
And what can we fill it with?
Well, that's right.
And now we're back in Bourbon Street.
You see, it all comes full circle. Welcome to New Orleans.
Exactly.
But I think the question we're asking all of us is, how do we instill this resilience? And I think some of us have it naturally, but some of us maybe have to have it brought out. And without challenge, can it be brought out? That's a good question, maybe.
Yeah. How do we do that? A for effort, right? How do you apply that in your personal life?
Well, I think all of us realize, and you learn this as you grow older too, that life is uncertain and you never know what path it's going to take. So all you can ever do is make the most informed decision you can and then try like hell. There's a great quote from Jack Welch, who used to run General Electric.
Yep.
And he said, strategy is 5% about picking a direction and then 95% executing like heck. And I think that's really what it means, is that, the safest place for a ship is in the harbor, but you're never going to discover new lands that way. So we all have to sail every day, and we have to learn to, deal with the rough oceans.
And people who are a little bit timid to do that, what have you, for example, in this area, in your role as an economic development board, which is all about stimulating activity, stimulating ventures, what do you do to pull those who are a bit reluctant into this adventure?
That's a great question, and I think what I've actually found is that, to use a metaphor of urban development, if you want to redevelop a neighborhood, you don't do it all at once. You start with a pocket park. And that convinces some of the timid people, some of the people who are the naysayers, that maybe this is an okay idea, and you build it slowly, bottoms up. And so I think that's what you have to do, is you have to use examples to demonstrate that what you're doing is credible and that it will drive results. And then eventually everybody gets on board and suddenly you're a genius.
Exactly. So it's all about creating the little small experiments and the small stuff.
Well, it is, and it's also about understanding that top-down government can provide the resources, but true innovation is going to happen bottom-up from people at the local level. So you have to actually invest in people at the local level, whether it's the members of your company, your employees, or the member of your community, your residents. And if you empower them and trust them, that's how change happens.
Wow, beautiful lesson. Now, before we let you go, any other truly New Orleans culture that we can learn from? An attitude, as you say, we're different?
What I love about New Orleans, I think, and I've been lucky to live all over the world, is that it's one of the most human cities in America and maybe the world, and that is that the only true sin in New Orleans is being boring. This is the place that encourages all of us, whether we're 2 or 82, to explore our humanness, the good, the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. And I think that really is part of being alive, is having a full secular experience and a full spiritual experience. And New Orleans does that maybe better than any American city.
Wow, great message. And unfortunately, you are not here to experience that yourself. We all are and will.
Come join us.
Exactly.
We never close.
Exactly. But hopefully we were able to get some of these spirits and ideas across through Channel 3 Livestream. Yeah. Michael, thank you very much for being with us.
Harriet, thank you. Come visit us. Thank you so much.